Reading scores 3rd graders to 8th graders. Cool. 2015 to 2025. That's great, man. I guess Mississippi is pulling up a little bit. So now every single state except for New Jersey and Massachusetts is below the 2015 average. That's really cool. What's going on in New Mexico? Mostly indigenous people. Indigenous people in America are like legitimately the most economically fucked people in the country. So they get very poor reading scores and like every other score. You should see college lit reading comprehension levels. I couldn't believe it when I saw that SAT question. Read the paragraph. In the paragraph, the man was feeling sad and angry. The multi-choice question, what emotions was the man feeling in the paragraph? Like, was that real? It was real. That was real. I'm gonna believe it's rage bait anyway. That's fair. That's fair. Chicago Board of Trade wheat and Kentucky wheat futures climbed by their daily trading limits on Tuesday after the U.S. Department of Agriculture projected the nation's harvest will drop to the lowest level since 1972. Did I say Kentucky? I said Kentucky, didn't I? That wasn't right. That's cool. I didn't want to eat anyway. Who's ready for an easy summer bod? Hit the price limits, ran out. Okay. Nah, that's cool, man. Whatever. There's a wheat futures market. There's an everything futures market. Mind you, the population was 209 million. That is true. Back during the 1972 harvest, the population was 1/3 lower than it is today. So, if you think about it, it might actually be the worst harvest since the Dust Bowl. Is there a futures market on futures markets? Unironically, yes. You can trade you can speculate on speculation easily, yeah. It's almost infinitely regressive, for sure. Yeah, go on Kalshi. So even rice and beans are fucked? Nah, man, this is wheat futures. You don't want to be eating wheat anyway. A linguist explains why the literacy crisis is overblown and not accurately represented with this informative 45-minute video. Well, I appreciate you warning me about the, This is, less than 10,000 views. I can't watch this on stream, but I guess I'm curious to see the arguments. I have to say, though, the evidence that we're in a literacy crisis is overwhelming. I would be very surprised if the arguments that he made were convincing to me.
And now the most important part you've all been waiting for, the literacy crisis. Let's start with the data mentioned here.
The literacy crisis is at an all-time high in the United States, and 21% of all adults in the US are illiterate, and 79% are technically literate, and that sounds nice until you start breaking that down. Because over half of adults have a literacy level that is considered below 6th grade.
You can see her sources from the National Literacy Institute. If you Google National Literacy Institute, it'll be one of the first things you see. Click on 2024, and this is the article she used. At the top, it says, literacy is the key to solving everything, and 130 million adults in the US struggle to read basic sentences. That sounds familiar. I wonder where I've seen that before. And we can scroll down to the bullet points she was reading from. This is how it looks vertical when you screenshot it on a phone, but I'm looking at the webpage in my background here. On average, 79% of adults nationwide are literate in 2024. 21% of adults in the US are illiterate in 2024. 54% of adults have a literacy below a 6th grade level. Wow. Okay. If you scroll down just a little bit, literally right here, the exact same data shows up for 2022 to 2023. Like 21% of adults are illiterate in 2022, 54% have a literacy below a 6th grade level. It's literally the exact same numbers. Hasn't changed over a couple years. And nowhere on this page, scroll all the way down, all the way up, nowhere on this page is a single source for that data.
Okay.
Pretty wild for a literacy institute, if you ask me. So people keep citing this claim without seeing the actual data or even knowing where the data comes from. Luckily for you, I do know where this data comes from, and I've even made a detailed video about it before, which you can see here or linked in the description. But I'll go over the National Literacy. Forbes article actually cite the study, which is a Gallup study done on behalf of the Barbara Bush Foundation. This was done to estimate the economic gains of eradicating illiteracy. Now ask yourself, why would a literacy foundation sponsor a study on the economic benefits of improving literacy? Is there something familiar to their goals? At the top, it says literacy is the key to solving everything, and 130 million adults in the US struggle to read basic sentences. That sounds familiar. I wonder where I've seen that before. Maybe, just maybe, they want your money. They want donations, and they want data that shows you will get your literal money's worth of donations. Now, don't get me
Donations? Huh? I don't understand. How does them sponsoring the study and then using the data cited from the study translate directly into the... If you're going to make an argument for changing the curriculum in the United States to improve literacy, it does make sense that you would want like an economic evaluation of the value of doing so. I don't think that it validates the contents of the study, especially if it was run by Gallup. Gallup is extremely trustworthy. They sponsored the study, but like, okay, so they... I don't think that jeopardizes the legitimacy of the study at all. The Literacy Foundation raises money via donation? Sure, lots of places raise money via donations, but what does that have to do with the legitimacy of the Gallup survey?
wrong. I think improving literacy does deserve money and resources, a lot. But just keep in mind the purpose of a report like this and why they might define things a certain way. So where's the actual definition of illiteracy? Here on page 6 of the document, they define illiterate as people who scored below level 3 on the PIAAC literacy test. Oh, and by the way, level 2 is up to 275 out of 500 points. The OECD global average was 268. So they're defining illiterate as being above the global average. Does that sound like it makes sense? But if we look
Well, I mean, yeah, the global average, sure. Yeah, the global average would be weighed down by countries that have very low average literacy, right? I don't know that I'm just looking at what's being presented to me here, but yeah, that doesn't necessarily sound wrong to me.
as being above the global average. Does that sound like it makes sense? But if we look at the National Center for Education Statistics, citing the same data, they say for the purposes of this report, they're defining illiteracy as people who score below level 1, not level 2, not even level 1, below level 1. And even then, other parts of the NECS,
I'm sorry.
they're defining statistics, citing the same data, they say, but if we look at the National Center for Education Statistics, citing the same data, they say for the purposes of this report, they're defining illiteracy as people who score below level 1, not level 2, not even level 1, below level 1.
Okay, so different definitions of illiteracy.
Even then, other parts of the NECS define illiteracy as being unable to read or write in any language. And the actual PI...
Well, I mean, obviously, different institutions might define illiteracy differently, because illiterate could mean like you literally can't read anything, or it could mean you don't have the ability to read well enough to like parse daily information. So like, for example, people often say medieval peasants were illiterate, but that's not strictly true. They were illiterate in Latin, but when it came to their written language, oftentimes even farmers knew enough to keep a ledger. Being able to read and write is really important when it comes to navigation, map making and map reading, keeping a ledger, basic trade documents. You didn't have to be a merchant or anyone from the mercantile class to know how to read. Usually, even very poor people knew some reading, right? They had to read road signs, you know? They knew the letter, they knew the alphabet, they understood like very basic language skills. So what you mean when you say illiteracy kind of varies. In my mind, if you can't read and understand a New York Times article, I would consider you illiterate in the English language. That might seem a little bit harsh, but like that is a net that will encompass a lot of Americans. That to me is a very basic standard of English proficiency that is necessary to be able to parse information day to day in the world. You need to be able to understand stuff like that. I think that's reasonable. Like, if we stop the definition of illiteracy as you can read Dr. Seuss, like, okay, so what? People can read enough to, like, process Amazon warehouse training module, but not well enough to understand why the world's going to shit? No. For me, for a functioning democracy, literacy means you have to be able to read well enough to understand why the oligarchs want to rape your children.
PIAAC study does not define any of its scores as illiterate. But back to the Gallup study, based on their analysis, who has the lowest literacy and most to gain? The places with the most Latin American immigrants. They specifically mentioned Merced, California and McAllen, Texas. The census agrees. These places have some of the highest amounts of Latinos, about 87% Hispanic in the case of McAllen, or almost 3/4 of people don't even speak English at home. So is it a coincidence that cities with less English speakers scored lower on their literacy test?
No, it's because they don't read English. What? No, it's not. No, it's not a coincidence. That's causal. They're immigrants. They don't speak English that well, right?
No, because the actual PIAAC test administered in the USA was only done in English. Even though they allowed people to do the background questionnaire in Spanish, they could only take the actual test in English. This is from their Reader's Companion, basically information about the PIAAC.
But we're testing English literacy. So shouldn't they be eliminated from the study though? Depends on what you're looking for, but keep in mind that the overall decrease in literature includes data from states that have very few Latin people. Like, we're talking about a nationwide tendency. It's more pronounced in areas that have a lot of Latin immigrants because a lot of them don't speak English well, but we're talking about a broader tendency. It depends on what you're trying to measure.
Skill survey from the OECD website. So the USA was one of only 2 countries that had participants involved fill out the background survey in a language that they couldn't also take the test in. And literally right after that table,
That does seem odd to me.
the document says you cannot judge someone's proficiency in literacy just based on their proficiency in the language of the test. People who take the test in a second language are probably not going to do as good. They are testing people who don't speak English on their English literacy. And the source for all the numbers people keep repeating literally says the lowest scores are due to immigrants. But people keep taking that to say
Well, wait, it's also the case in, well, no, hold on. The data we have implicates far more than just immigrants and the children of immigrants.
adults in the US can't read. In addition, most countries part of this study used a national registry to find participants, and those countries all excluded undocumented immigrants, and in some cases, legal immigrants, asylum seekers, or other legal residents under specific circumstances. The USA was one of the countries that used screeners, and if you look at their exclusions, the only exclusions for the US are places they couldn't find. And if we go back to the Gallup definition for illiteracy, they say it's people who scored below level.
I think he's correct on this, though. If they're using data that includes people who aren't even primary English speakers, and they're counting that data as valid, I think that's a different data set from the argument that people who are trying to know how to read and speak in English aren't literate. It skews the data. I think this is a fair complaint. I don't think it invalidates the broader problem, but this is a fair complaint.
3 on the PIAAC. So what does the PIAAC document say? It defines literacy like this: basically being able to read and understand things for personal and society's purposes. Here's more of their info about that. You'll notice they make no definition of illiteracy. They do have descriptions of what each level should be capable of. Level 3 is a score of 276 to 325 points. This is out of 500, by the way. Level 5, the top level, is 376 or more. So any of the people who scored 276...
Sure, but aren't we also seeing illiteracy rates rise in countries that haven't seen an increase in non-official language speaking? Yeah. In America, literacy right now is decreasing across the country, state by state. It's not just because of the proportion of immigrants or whatever. Like, it is a widespread tendency that correlates strongly with the rise of smartphone usage and COVID. AI will probably fuck things off too. But we don't have the data on that quite yet, I don't think. So, like, we know it's an issue that extends beyond just errors in surveying method, you know? No, it is happening in other countries, Blister X, though it's happening particularly here. No, the whole developed world is having a crisis right now. A lot of it's stemming from COVID. But yeah, people are, on average, getting kind of stupider, I think.
Points or more are equally considered fully literate by the Gallup study. It makes no distinction beyond that. And then 275 points and below is considered illiterate. Again, with no further distinctions mentioned or defined. But what is level 2 described as in the PIAAC? So this is how they say it. Access and understand information in longer texts with some distracting information. I don't know, man. That doesn't sound illiterate. Not necessarily a scholar's capabilities, but it sounds like they're perfectly literate for average daily tasks.
No, again, I think you need to be able to parse news articles. That does mean a lot to me. Hold on, I'm going to read one more segment here, which is what is a 6th grade level, because I think this strikes at the core of the issue here. I'm going to watch this, and then we'll move on to other subjects. But I am interested in what he has to say. I think a lot of you guys are being very reflexively mean for no reason. I don't know why.
What does that mean? 6th graders read plenty long and complex books, right? They might not be reading financial reports or scientific studies and stuff like that, but you know, it's not like 6th graders are illiterate. So people keep...
Okay, let's set the bar a little bit higher here, all right? 6th graders are what? 11, I think? we really cannot set the bar for literacy at the expected 12? Okay, 12. At the expected level of comprehension of a 12-year-old. A sixth grader could read a New York Times article. Okay, but could they comprehend it? That's the question for me. Could a sixth grader read it and tell me the meaning of words? Sure. Could they read it and take away the points? Could they reiterate to me and explain it to me in their own words? Could they comprehend it and then teach me the information contained within it without omitting significant information or recontextualizing it? In my experience as a tutor, no. Yeah, see, that's the issue that I have, because like every day I encounter evidence that adults in the United States are incompetent to the point of not even being able to do this. So I really don't know what we mean.
Saying these things without defining them, and I don't know where they're getting it from. Like the sixth grade level thing, I can't find that source. Even the Gallup study, which is the closest to the source for the 54% or 130 million figure, does not describe what a sixth grade level or lacks proficiency means. It doesn't even say that that means struggling to read basic sentences. It just says that it's based on data from the Department of Education with no source. Like, we can see the claims before and after that have footnotes with citations and even links, but that 54% claim does not have a source. And when I look for the source of that claim, I cannot find it. Only more articles and people repeating that claim without ever even saying what it's supposed to be based on. This one Reddit post says new study dated to 2023 and again gives the exact same numbers. And a Medium article that has no source.
What do you think caused the decline in comprehension specifically versus overall reading? Well, comprehension has always been harder than reading, but I mean, it seems obvious to me, COVID and smartphones. Seriously, talk to any teacher. No student in class is paying attention anymore. None. It's over. Truly, like if you go to the r/teachers subreddit, you'll find like borderline suicide pact kind of social formation arrangement between them. You know, that people are, it is not good.
Entire article. It doesn't give a single source. It doesn't even say this is where the data comes from, right? But it must be based on the Gallup study because they use the same numbers and talk about the same economic gains that the Gallup study was written for. Actually, as I'm editing this, I think I figured it out because the Medium article says getting everyone to sixth grade level proficiency would add 2.2 trillion to the economy, where the Gallup report says getting everyone to level 3 on the PIAAC would add 2.2 trillion. So that must be what they're defining sixth grade as, although I don't know who made that definition. I don't find any source that says level 3 on this test is a sixth grade level. Actually, that still doesn't make sense. I woke up the next morning at 4:30 and I couldn't go back to sleep for like an hour and a half because I kept thinking about how this doesn't make any sense. So they're saying 21% are illiterate as defined by Gallup, scoring below level 3 on the PIAAC. And they say getting everyone up to level 3 or eradicating illiteracy is what will add 2.2 trillion. So how can this other article then say getting everyone up to a sixth grade level, which supposedly covers 54% of people, is what adds 2.2 trillion? They're obviously getting their numbers from Gallup, but using different definitions or just completely ignoring what Gallup actually says, even though Gallup is already using a ridiculous definition. If 21% are illiterate and
he seems correct in the sense that there's an erroneous substitution of terminology here from the Gallup poll to the sixth grade claim.
54% are below a sixth grade level, then 54 obviously being bigger means that there has to be an even higher standard than the people who are illiterate. And remember, illiterate by this definition already includes up to and a little bit above the global average. So we still don't know what a sixth grade level is supposed to be, but it clearly has to be way higher than the global average for adults. Which doesn't make any sense, does it? So
my like extremely strong bias on this subject leads me to believe that the average adult is functionally illiterate. I would say it's probably a coin flip. I really do think that if I went across America and I showed them like a basic reading standards test that I would consider to be a sort of a watermark for literacy, that about half of them would get it and about half of them wouldn't. Do the Dickens dinosaur test? Well, that was for college students. It was still very depressing, but that was for college students.
How can these numbers show that illiteracy is at an all-time high today if these numbers keep getting used year on year but haven't changed since 2020 and are based on test score data taken from 2012 through 2017?
Doing a vibes-based assessment. It's not vibes-based. There's a lot of really good data out there on the decline in literacy. It is real. It's a real thing that exists. I do think that he's correct in pointing out that there's bad data out there, though.
How does that apply to today? And here's a correction I have to make. In my previous video on this source, I said they had about 12,000 participants in the US. I said that because the Gallup study says they extrapolated data from those numbers for places where people didn't take the PIAAC.
Yeah, maybe there's bad methodology because the people who were conducting the study were illiterate.
But the PIAAC document says the US only had less than 3,800 completed cases, not even meeting the standards minimum they wanted, which was 4,000 to 5,000 for every country, which I also think is kind of odd because despite wildly different population sizes and diversities, 4,000 or 5,000 for every single country. I mean, I certainly appreciate the difficulty of getting thousands of completed cases across dozens of countries. And I understand why it's not more, because it's really hard to get that many people involved. But can we really take 3,800 completed US cases as equally accurate as examples like Latvia getting 6,500 or Canada getting over 11,000?
3,800 is sufficient for this data, assuming that you're not engaging in sampling bias.
Like, this is a country of 340 million people. I went into more detail on this in the previous video, but some other things I'm going to briefly mention. The test says nothing about if any people who took the test had disabilities of any kind, developmental, learning disabilities, if they were excluded or if they were...
Well, that would be part of the test, but...
part of it. It doesn't make any mention of things like dyslexia, even though we know that dyslexia is more common and more severe in English writing compared to languages like Spanish or Italian with more consistent spelling. But in spite of that, if we look at the average scores on that test across countries, the US actually outscores countries like Spain and Italy. The USA is actually just slightly above the OECD average, tied with Austria and Germany with an average of 270.
But isn't that data from 2014? Like, the point is that the trend is getting worse. It's not really a comparison between the United States and Spain. It's a comparison between the United States 10 years ago and the United States today. Like, this data that he's referring to, I'm pretty sure that it's pulled from this, which cites information from 2012 and 2014 from the Department of Education. No? NCES.ed.gov? Yeah. His point is that it's all based off flawed data. Not necessarily. I don't know if the data that he's looking at here is really what we're looking for when we're talking about, like, the current decline in literacy, right? We're looking for data that tracks onto, like, post-COVID, you know? I mean, I do think he's making a good point here, though, about, like, how there's been misrepresentation of the data, but I don't think it changes the fact that, like, the problem is still happening, you know?
If we use the Gallup definition, that means the US is, on average, illiterate. The average is illiterate, not looking good. But then so are Germany, Austria, Spain, Singapore, Ireland, Canada, England, and everyone except the top 9 countries on this list. And those are at most 20 out of 500 points above illiterate. 7 of those 9 are less than 10 points above the illiterate cutoff in that Gallup study. But would you, any of you who have repeated these claims about the US, would any of you say that those countries are 21% illiterate? No other countries use the same data to describe their literacy rates. Multiple parts of the European Union have expressed concern over this, though. But would anyone say that over half of their adults struggle to read basic sentences? I mean,
well, again, what I would really like is if we could just look at what's being tested. You know what I mean? Like, okay, 50% of American adults can't pass this test, and then you look at the test and you see what people are struggling with. That's what I mean. Like, I just want to see what we mean. I would like to just see what the level of competence we're testing people for is. You want to be sad? This kid in TikTok does a series of videos where he asks other kids at his high school to read sentences. Oh, didn't this kid get, like, banned? Oh, wait, fuck. Didn't he get in trouble or something? I don't know if this is necessarily good methodology, though it is sensational. He keeps swapping the definition of illiteracy. I would like to see, I want every American adult to sit down and take a test where they read a short like passage from a book and then answer questions about it. That's all.
And people saying this are out there saying other people are illiterate. Like what? Like these people are hearing the claim that over half of adults in the US struggle to read basic sentences and don't even think to question where that data might come from. But the people who scored 275, which is above average, the people who scored 275 instead of 276 on that test, those are the illiterate ones, not the people who see.
What? How difficult is this PIAAC test? PIAAC test scoring. It's on a 500-point scale. So we're talking about the difference between level 2 and level 3, right? That's the line we're talking about. Samples, bottom tab. These items were not administered in either field test, PIAAC view, interact with full set of sample items, see the PIAAC released items. So what do I... So these are examples of text. I don't know if that means... Like, this item represents a moderate to high difficulty level. This item represents a moderate to high. What, I don't know how to parse that, though. Like, I look at a thing and then what? If I get it, that means that I'm level 3 or something? I don't know how the scoring system works. I agree with Vaush politically, but I can't stand him talking down to people whose circumstances he knows nothing about. Who am I talking down to right now? We're just engaging with this video. You mean this guy's circumstances? I'm just engaging with what he says in the video. I don't know. Who am I talking down to? PIAAC methodology. The test seems to be behind a paywall. Many such cases. Okay. The second item represents a moderate to high difficulty level. Based on the information in the article, is each statement below true for bread, crackers, or both? This is moderate to high difficulty level? Well, you haven't read the paragraph? How deceptive is it? Read the passage. Bread gets hard, but crackers get soft. Why does bread exposed to the air get hard and stale? Part of the reason is that it loses moisture. The typical soft bread is about 32 to 38% moisture. If the bread is left unwrapped and exposed to the elements, it loses moisture to the air. It'll become stiff when the moisture level lessens to about 14%. At the same time, the moisture in the bread is evaporating. A process called retrogradation occurs, in which the starch structure of the bread changes. During retrogradation, the crust of the bread softens and the middle portion of the bread hardens. In addition, a portion of the starch becomes crystallized. When this happens, it results in a gradual firming of the bread as it becomes stale. Hard starches, like crackers, are crisp because they're baked with an extremely low moisture level, usually 2 to 5%. When they're exposed to the air, crackers absorb the air's moisture. Crackers seem soft when their moisture level reaches about 9%. So, based on the information in the article, is each statement true for bread, crackers, or both? Should be wrapped to stay fresh. Fresher when soft. Affected by exposure to the air. So, this seems fairly straightforward to me. But this one is a moderate to high difficulty level. So, like, if I was able to consistently, correctly answer questions of this difficulty, would that place me in level 2 or level 3 or level 4, or I see you're not picking answers. I admit the gripping terror of being humiliated on stream. It does hurt my heart, but my understanding is that both should be wrapped to stay fresh. Only bread is fresher when soft because it hardens when exposed to the air, and both are affected by exposure to the air. So both, bread, both. Now, if I'm wrong, then let me be struck down now. One question doesn't give you a level. I know that. I just mean, like, I would like to know what it looks like for an adult to only score level 2. That's what I mean. I get your point, but we're missing the scoring methodology. No, I know that, which is why I would like it if somebody... Okay, hold on one second. PIAAC equivalent to grade reading level. But as soon as you do this, you introduce the methodological problems identified by the YouTuber. PIAAC literacy levels measure adult skills rather than school grades, but roughly correlate to school-based reading levels to indicate functional literacy. Adults with low literacy, level 1 or below, are often compared to 4th to 6th grade reading levels, while functional proficiency, level 3 plus, indicates high school level or higher. 3 plus is functional proficiency, but isn't the average American just below 3? If the average American is right at the level between 2 and 3, would that not imply that half of Americans are subliterate? I know half of adult Americans are subliterate because I interact with adult Americans. But I'd like some data to back up my my belief. Yeah, 56% of the USA is level 2 or below in the PIAAC. But Canada, for example, is 48% at level 2 or below. Better, yes, but not that much better, and still very close to 50%. But I don't think it's only an American problem. I think it's a broader issue. I guess the main issue is that recently, even these relatively bad levels have been declining. 56% reading at a level 2 or below. I guess I just wish I could read, like, what a level 2 passage looks like. Like, oh, if you can't understand this, you're a level 2. You know what I mean? Like, show me the bar. What does a level 2 or PIAAC, I forgot the P. PIAAC proficiency look like? Sample questions? Yeah, but the sample questions don't really tell me much if I don't know the grading key. And even if I knew the grading key, that wouldn't give me the ability to grade it. I'm not a teacher. Vaush refusing to read a study about literacy and demanding a graph is deliciously ironic. Wait, what study am I refusing to read? Are you referring to this description right here? This is, with all due respect to the fine people over at the Department of Education, puffery. This is not helpful to me. Task achievement often requires the test taker to either reason about one piece of information or to gather information across multiple processes. This is not colloquially useful to me. It doesn't provide me the information that I need. Passages that correspond to PIAAC reading levels. Like, give me something that a level 2 PIAAC reader could not comprehend. Give me a question they couldn't answer. Give me something they couldn't do. It does kind of say it right there. It doesn't. It doesn't. This isn't helpful. You ultimately refusing to do the task required by a PIAAC test is ironic. You people are really struggling with listening comprehension right now. I don't know if there's a test for that. This information right here does not, as a layperson, which I and you both are, give me the information I need to make a colloquial assessment in non-teacher speak about what it means to have this level of proficiency. This info isn't useful to me. Yes, I want an example of it, not a description of the level. Is it meant to be? You people are killing me. Like, unironically, you realize a lot of you are demonstrating illiteracy right now, right? Like, you don't comprehend the difference between a teacher's, an academic's description of different proficiency levels versus a practical application of that knowledge. Those are different things. It's like the difference between, here is what a 6th grader is expected to know in regards to algebra, and here is a question that a 6th grader would not be expected to be able to answer. Those are two different things. As a layperson, I don't really have the ability to read this and then instantly correlate it to a level of colloquial literary proficiency. I was mostly poking fun. Well, then you're demonstrating a degree of emotional illiteracy because you're not reading the room. It's a serious problem. The serious problem in question being making fun of me. Sample questions don't help me. This claims to have a level 2 test. This is a level 2 test. Sample sentence processing items. Determine whether or not these sentences make sense with respect to the real world. Why are my lights glitching? 3 girls ate the song. Does this make yes or no? Page 6, level 1? Okay. For PIAAC, item difficulty is reported along a 5-level scale, with level 1 being the easiest items and level 5 being the hardest. This sample is a level 2 item. This isn't exactly what I asked for, but okay. Literacy, sample item 2 continued. The text is a little hard for me to read. Maybe that's illiteracy. Physical exercise equipment. Sample item 1. This isn't what I'm looking for. Just go to level 3. It's fine. It's fine. Sure. Sample level 3. For PIAAC, item difficulty is reported along a 5-level scale, with level 1 being the easiest items, level 5 being the hardest. This sample is a level 3 item. Again, respondents are asked to type in a numerical response based on the graphic provided. Okay. Look at the thermometer. Using the number keys, type your answer to the question below. If the temperature shown decreases by 30 degrees Celsius, what would the temperature be in degrees Celsius? Oh dear. That's level 3? Well, again, I'm putting myself out in the mark here, but you know, that looks to me like the pointer is at a solid 26 degrees Celsius, so it would be at -4. It could be at 25. I don't know. There's kind of some variance in the print. 25 or 26, 6, 7. That looks pretty dead center. -5. Correct response: any value between -4 and -5. Okay, it looks like, sure. I appreciate them giving me a bit of variance there. This is a level 3? Because what? A level 2 would fall for the Fahrenheit section rather than the Celsius section? Doesn't that scream functional illiteracy to you? Like, if an adult failed this test, wouldn't you be a little justified in thinking this motherfucker's illiterate? And I don't mean like they're failing this test in the sense of like they made a snap judgment, like they looked quickly at a thermometer and like just misread it. This is a test question. You know you're taking a test, so you would try your best to look at it. So knowing you're taking a test, if a person failed on this, I think I would be fair in assuming some degree of the task is not the exercise, it's reading the instructions. Yes, and these instructions, I think, if you couldn't understand these instructions, I would question your literacy. Some people in chat right now are failing. You can actually see people in chat struggling with this, but I'll try not to linger. Sample item 4. For PIAAC, item difficulty is reported along a 5-item scale, with level 1 being the easiest. This is a level 5 item. Okay. Hold on. All right, everyone, put on your thinking caps. In fact, hold on. I'm going to potentially humiliate myself. And there, I can no longer see chat. I've opened up another tab on my second monitor. I'm not looking at chat. We're going to do this, okay? Look at the advertisement found in a newspaper. Using the number keys, type your answer to the question below. What is the annual rate of simple interest that the lender charges? Okay, annual rate of simple interest. Apply for a loan of up to $70,000. Terms of the loan: pay only $103 per month for each $1,000 borrowed, payable in 12 equal monthly payments. Okay, so it's annual rate of simple interest, and you're paying $103 per month for each $1,000 borrowed, which means that you would pay $1,236 per year for each $1,000 borrowed. So I guess my assumption would be that you're paying, what, 123.6%? Did I do that correctly? I would probably write it down. I have a bad memory, so I'd probably like jot this down to make sure that I'm not missing a 0 or a point here, but let's just go with 126.3% and see if I'm literate. Wait, 126 point... No, 123 point... What did I say? Oh, God, the memory. 36, right? 123.6. Well, we're finding out lots of interesting stuff today about me and my ability to criticize others. Huh? All right, let's find out why I'm illiterate. Let me open up chat again. 123% would be over double. Oh, you're right. This is paying the this isn't just paying the interest, it's paying the principal as well. No, you're completely correct. Yeah. I added it plus the principal. All right, well, that's my fault. No, I failed that one. Math questions don't prove literacy. Yes, but being able to understand the question does, and I made the mistake of not adding the principal there. I guess I'm a level 4. Sorry, folks. Reading instructions are the looks to me like level 5s or gotcha questions. Well, it's not a gotcha. It's like this is basic literacy. It's comprehending the question. What age is this supposed to be for? It's for adults. Well, at least I did the math correctly. Page 24 on this one for a more passage-based example. Ah, trying to give me the opportunity to salvage my ego? I'll accept. Page 24, you say. What was the correct answer? Any value between 23 and 24, because you're rounding there. My mistake was that it did not occur to me that you were paying the principal in addition to the interest. It asked only simple interest, not interest plus principal. I was answering the total amount relative to how much you borrowed you pay per year, but the question was only the simple interest, which means that I failed in my comprehension of the question. What did you say? Page 24? This doesn't tell me the expected... No, this isn't helpful for me, I'm afraid, what I'm looking at right now. Hi, chat. What I was looking at wasn't useful to me. I would like to see more of these, though. Table 1 on page 8 gives a description of the passages of text at different levels, but I don't want to see a description of the passages. I want to see the text itself. I long to live in a world where I would fail the literacy test required to vote. Okay, closing this. Sorry, we got a lot of tabs open. I see some test examples listed by the OECD, but not ones that correlate to difficulties level 4 or 5 or whatever. PIAAC sample items. PIAAC sample items. PIAAC released items. Does this give the, like, expected difficulty? Download the PIAAC released items report. I don't think that this would provide the expected difficulty of them. Estimated difficulty moderate to high. Oh, this is the bread one, no? No, it's a different bread one, not the bread and crackers one. Yeah, this doesn't provide the expected difficulty of these passages, which makes it difficult for me to get anything from them. Some of them do. Yes, it does. Some of them do, but I'm not seeing it for all of these. Can you look up the reading levels of different novels? That's not covered by the PIAAC. Moderate to high has to be proficiency level 3. Oh, here we go. Wait, proficiency level. Do all of them have that in the chart? Have I just been missing that? Proficiency level 3. Okay, hold on. 1 second. Proficiency level. 3, 3, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 3. Wait, was that a 4? 3, 3, 2. They're all 3s and 2s. Well, that's not... Middle school questions are geared 2 to 3. No, this is for adults. The PIAAC test is for adults. Well, if I can't find any, I guess there's no point in continuing to look for them. PIAAC background questionnaire. Data, sample test item, cycle 1 data, numeracy, sample items. Yeah, there are so few examples out there. So annoying. All right, well.